Welcome to the ADK Rock and Metal channel. My name is Kirk and today I'm going to be reviewing a Norwegian black metal album. It's the artist Mork and the album is called Sept and it's released on the 20th of September 2024 via Peaceful Records. So who and what is Mork? Well, it's actually a one-man project, the brainchild of multi-instrumentalist Thomas Eriksson, who started in 2004 and for the first 10 years played everything. So that's drums, guitars, synths, keyboards, vocals, bass. And for the last 10 years, from 2014 to the present, he's concentrated exclusively on vocals, guitars and bass, and brings in outside musicians to perform the drums. Let me give you some context then. This is album number 7 and the 7th album in the last 11 years by Mork. So our friend Thomas Eriksson has been very productive over the last decade. I reviewed the 2021 Katedralen EP and the 2023 album Dipet for our sister organisation Scream Blast Repeat, and I enjoyed both of those records. You probably know that black metal is low down on my list of priorities when it comes to listening to extreme metal. I find that a lot of the traditional bands or bands that are copying the traditionalists from that Norwegian scene of the early 90s are just dull and uninspiring and often not even very heavy. So Mork stands out because he's still flying the flag for true Norwegian black metal. So let's get into album number 7. I'm probably going to butcher some of these song titles. I do speak a bit of German, so I do know 2 Germanic languages, English being one of them, but Norwegian baffles me, the way that they pronounce the vowels, and it's not as guttural as the German or indeed the English language. So when we get to track number 1, I Turkens Vervel, it's 7 minutes and 14 seconds, and a synth drum wavers in the intro as a delay drenched arpeggio picks at the strings. The violence erupts after 30 seconds with a sustained roar and distorted guitars in what appear to be standard tuning. See, Mork's black metal has a clear thrash metal angle to it here with rapid alt-picking rhythms, but the shrieking vocals are unmistakably black metal in their venom. The tone of this piece is unpretentious, like a dry plug-in with few if any effects, yet the switch to a martial gallop at the 3-minute mark is the complete opposite. This is now pompous and brave, like the cut and thrust of cavalry warfare. Eriksson pays a lot of attention to his transitions in this song, changing the style and tempo on 3 distinctive occasions in this track. I've only got one criticism of the vocals: they're too dry, like someone trying to growl with a debilitating cold. They've got more force when Eriksson rolls his R's in the Norwegian language and when he's roaring rather than sounding like a goblin. So we move on to track number 2, Gang. And you can hear a folk texture underneath the metallic guitar passages. Imagine Black Sabbath using a Jethro Tull motif but with the added spice of Darkthrone to heat it up somewhat. You can't complain about this music being one-dimensional or ploughing over familiar black metal tropes. I mean, listen to the bass weave its way through guitars that are heavily distorted, yet you can still hear them as you would in a prog band. So we're at track number 2, and I don't think I've even heard a blast beat. Eriksson's screaming vocals are much more forceful here. Track number 3, this is an interesting song, 5 minutes and 41 seconds in length. It's called Hexabill. So the shrill of amplifier gain cuts through your speakers in a mystical formation. It's like a distorted arpeggio for the main riff. The drums follow in a simple 2-beat pattern at an agitated tempo. There's a remarkable transition as well here at 2 minutes and 55 seconds from spacey prog metal to headbanging death thrash. So I mean, if you take out the vocal inflections, this is quite a progressive song, even though your hands want to hold a sword aloft for most of the action. This is an album of 9 tracks, so when we reach the second third, so that's track number 3 through to track number 6, we've already got an idea of how this album is going to pan out, or at least we think we do. So we get to track number 4, Utbrent, and here Eriksson roars like a man impaled on a rusty spike to kick things off here as the guitars work through the sliding power chords and rapid palm muting like the early Destruction records. The imagination of the guitar work deserves praise here. I mean, Eriksson explores all areas of his fretboard rather than just drowning everything in those fast tremolo rhythms that are synonymous with black metal. The first breathing space of the album arrives in the drop-off in tempo here at the 2-minute mark of this song, yet a syncopated upstroke of bass penetrates through the hallucinogenic melodies. These chord choices would be more melodic in clean mode, but they sound atonal in maximum overdrive settings. This is a characteristic, isn't it, of black metal that's clearly influenced dissonant death metal. So you can appreciate the sophistication of the backing vocals in this song as well. They saunter in the background like, I don't know, monks doing penance. When we move on to the 5th track, Med Duden til Filger, I would say this is melodic black metal with a strain of like savage melancholy. You can imagine Eriksson curling his fingers up and flaring his corpse-painted nostrils at the microphone here. The latent chivalry of this piece leads to self-satisfaction, I would say. Black metal is all about discovering your martial and spiritual capabilities in the heat of the moment, isn't it? So this song uses anthemic peaks and troughs without delivering the single-on chorus, which is exactly the point. You need to feel the music in your chest and stomach as much as in your heart. Track number 6, Und Blut. This actually gives us a rare intro of lo-fi blast beats, but they soon give way to crunchy guitars and head-swinging shapes. The drums here are restless and unpredictable, and I would say this is how you chug away at your axe like a god of Teutonic thrash. Eriksson's legato-heavy guitar solo is quite surprising as well. Seldom does he treat us to such flamboyance on his other records, so to get a solo in here is quite a rarity. But instead, you know, when you listen to it, we're used to the ferocity of the outro, which here sounds like a man tossed into the depths of hell. The last third of a black metal album, death metal album, any metal album really is important, isn't it? Because this is where it could really get away from you, where you could start to lose interest. And Mork does quite a good job here of keeping you interested. Track number 7, Tiden's Tan. First thing that comes to mind, especially on this track, is the mixing and mastering of this album is a triumph of simplicity and purpose. It feels like a mastered demo recorded in the rehearsal room with some additional touches after the event. There's a swagger to this effort, despite its bloodlust and disdain for extravagance. Listen to the imagination of the arpeggiated riffs as they take in all strings of the instrument, and the bass won't be outdone here either in its expressive fervency. Track number 8, the penultimate song on the album, Til Sivende Exist. So this one stands out for me. It starts like classic Voivod with an emphasis on unorthodox chord shapes and proggy bass lines. You don't know the drums will lay down the beat or even were, and that's part of the fun. There's an inventive use of keyboards here as well to accent the beginning of each bar in the lead up to the switch to 8th note drum patterns. Is this an instrumental though? That's a question you're asking after 2 minutes, and it is. And I think that's a good decision at this stage of the album. Listen to the mid-range chords bite like the snapping jaws of a wild predator creature. This song takes on a new life at the 3-minute mark as well, with an upbeat drum and a new layering of guitars and keyboards aiming for one last charge at the enemy positions in reckless glory. That's certainly the feeling it gave to me. And you can actually hear a fiddle, I'm sure I could, among the competing instruments. I mean, where the fuck did that come from? So closing track, Omer. This is a real surprise. It's the maudlin folk guitar piece. Here Eriksson explores his lullaby voice as if sat by a campfire in the Norwegian mountains with only a guitar to keep him company. Again, you can detect the sorrowful impact of a cello this time in the background, and the meditative harmonies goes through the mix here like respectful mourners of the ancestors that once hunted on this land. What are my final thoughts on this album then? Black metal's only interesting these days when it breaks down boundaries and embraces experimentation. For example, artists like Dawn of Ouroboros, Defacement and Omega Infinity. This record strikes a good balance between old school black metal, prog and galloping thrash metal. Thomas Eriksson's guitar work is imaginative and quite unorthodox, using some interesting chord shapes that never veer entirely towards the dissonance that we associate with modern extreme metal. His shrieking goblin vocals can be a bit dry. He's better when he roars at the microphone like a man undergoing a disembowelment procedure. The prog bass lines and use of cellos add textures to the music that's often lacking in this genre. Saying that, there are some wonderful progressive and avant-garde black metal bands around, such as Død Heimsgard, Henget and Knekelpot, and this album doesn't quite hit the heights of the last records put out by these bands, but it's well worth a listen or two. And I should say for this record, it's not avant-garde, it's not an exclusively experimental or prog black metal album, and it's not meant to be because, as I said, Thomas Eriksson is carrying the flag for true Norwegian black metal, and with that comes some responsibility and custodianship. So let's give it a verdict then. As a reminder, there are 4 grades. If we like this album, the top grade, you will be considered a headliner. If we like this album and we want to give you the second highest grade, we would consider it main support. The third highest grade, you are the opener, as in you would be the opening band on a bill. And if we don't like the record, can't get into it, just not vibing with it, then we would say, perhaps rather harshly, or not, back to rehearsals. So Mork could easily headline a festival in his own country, and you've got to say this music is at the forefront of modern Norwegian black metal. But this album to me is a main support. That's because my expectation levels for traditional black metal artists are quite low, and something that piques my interest is not necessarily life-changing, even if it's a good record. In this case, Civ is a strong album because it retains its traditions while embracing change and experimentation on a gradual basis. So go out, buy it on CD, download it, stream it, go to Bandcamp, go to the Peaceful Records website. This album comes out on the 20th of September 2024. Thanks for watching. Remember to like and subscribe to the ADK Rock and Metal channel. I'll catch you on the next video.